Hey guys, welcome back to another Genshin Impact video. So, it's been a little over a week since I started playing the game. I'm still enjoying it very much. Great timing too, because I was getting bored of my current state of the channel, and this game offered a fresh change of pace, so I'm having a pretty good time. I wanted to make a discussion video after having played the game for a little while because, for the most part, while the game has had a really successful maiden voyage, there's a decent number of things they can do better on, but that's normal, that's to be expected, because no matter how big the budget is for a game or how much time is spent in development, even the best games in the world have their fair share of janks. So I wouldn't go and say Genshin Impact is a 10 out of 10 game, but I think people are also being somewhat overly critical on the things that it does poorly compared to what it does well. They are very viable things to talk about, but I just think that maybe we should also acknowledge the things that they do well. So that brings me to the topic of this video. I want to talk about things Genshin Impact has done very well as the things the game has done poorly. I'm gonna go in like an alternating fashion, so we'll talk about a good thing and then a bad thing, so on and so forth. The first thing the game does well, and something everyone can agree with, is that Genshin Impact makes effective use of the landscape. The most crucial dilemma you have to figure out when designing an open world game is how to make use of the space, because there's often a tendency for areas to become samey or very boring after a while, especially if you don't put anything in there. And so you might run into sections of the map that have a lot of dead space from one major point to another. Even the widely beloved Minecraft struggles with this, as sometimes you might travel from biome to biome and very little difference will come from them. Of course, in that game you can make use of the dead space by building stuff on your own, but you get what I mean. Genshin Impact does a great job distributing its contents across the Anemo and Geo regions to where you not only have the privilege to witness a ton of beautiful scenery, but there's usually something to do everywhere you go. The usage of waypoints, shrines, domains, temples, minor settlements and landmarks, oculi, enemy camps, ruins, etc. It makes your progression through the game way more enjoyable, especially when you're trying to unlock everything for the first time around. I know an argument could be made for the monotony of stuff, such as running into a Hilichurl camp for the 500th time, but my point is that there's always something to do wherever you go, and that's important to have because the biggest strength of an open world game is also its biggest weakness. The larger the game world is, the harder it is to ensure the consistency of quality among every aspect and every corner of the game, because you have to ensure that the player is entertained. Well, yeah, the goal is just to be consistent with your enjoyment of the content and the saturation of content so that the player doesn't have parts of the game where it feels like there's nothing really much going on. As for the first thing it did poorly on, and it's one of the two that everyone has been complaining about, the Resin system. And I share the same sentiments that the community does for the most part. Look, I'm all for limiting the amount of content a person can play in a day so as not to give the impression that you have to do things for hours and hours and hours every day, especially since gacha games are meant to be played in the interim parts of your daily life, such as your commute to work, lunch break, and when you wake up or right before bed. But while Genshin Impact has the premise of a gacha game, it is also a full-fledged PC game. Therefore, I think there should be some element of free access to whatever you want to do for however long you want to do it, because most PC games, especially single-player ones or games like this, attract an audience of gamers who would be willing and probably want to play for 5, 8, 10 hours a day. The issue is that this game has very little to do aside from completing quests and exploring the world. Most of the grindy stuff like grinding domains or world bosses require Resin, which normally wouldn't be a bad thing if it wasn't so expensive. Almost all gacha games have an energy system in place, but usually they give you enough energy to do whatever you wanted for several hours worth of gameplay a day. And any means to restore energy such as potions or storage were either obtainable in game, so if you kept grinding you could keep playing, or they were generously given to us through things like login rewards, daily mission completions, perhaps even maintenance compensation. Genshin Impact not only has some of the steepest energy requirements of all gacha games, but it also has the fewest amount of ways to refill that energy. The only way to restore original resin is to get fragile resin, which you can only get through adventure rank rewards. There's literally no other way to get these as of version 1.0. Although I did hear about a new potential way to get fragile resin in 1.1, regardless, without any free-to-play refillables, you can burn through all your resin in an hour and have basically nothing to grind out for the rest of the day. Players have come up with a variety of solutions to this. Some have advocated to allow us to grind for more resin through Battle Pass or something, but MiHoYo definitely needs to oversee this because they're kind of preventing us from playing the game to a reasonable extent because of resin. Onto the second thing they do well though, it's the character and equipment system. I personally have a huge dislike for games with like 100 different stat mechanics. That might sound a little self-contradicting considering I played MapleStory for a long time, but there's a reason why some of the best RPGs in the world have very simple stats and items. I'm not saying you can't add character complexity, but usually less is more, and Genshin knows this. Every unit comes with a basic set of properties. We have max HP, attack, defense, elemental mastery, and some element. You either cryo, pyro, geo, electro, I'm trying to remember, fire, ice, wind, electric, or lightning, earth, water, and nature, which I don't know what nature is compared to Earth, but you know. Technically, there are some supplementary stats such as crit rate, healing bonus, and whatnot, but you get the idea. There's an element and 4 stats. The weapons and artifacts are also kind of the same. A primary stat, secondary stat, and maybe a tertiary, quaternary, so on and so forth, but they're all things you recognize. Attack, defense, health, what have you. There are no weird stats like how many backflips the character can do or whether they can eat food 5 times faster, you know, nothing weird like that. This makes the game a relatively low learning curve to where even people who've never picked up a video game before can grasp it in a reasonable amount of time. Not going overboard on base stats does allow for more creativity with each individual's units and equipment properties, which let them stand out more in comparison to one another. Since there are only 4 main stats in the game, the character's potential skills, talents, and constellations they play a much bigger role to distinguish themselves, so it brings to attention the mechanics of a character that really matter. Moreover, it just reduces confusion. In other gacha RPGs, and mind you I've played quite a few of them, having to properly establish a team comp while figuring out what equipment to use, what skill set, blah blah blah, it's usually a big headache. You don't have to have so many different things in a game for complexity. In fact, in game design studies, that's what we call feature creep, where you focus too much on quantity of stats rather than quality. In Genshin Impact, it's pretty simple. There are healers, melee DPS, range DPS, and support. Each unit has an elemental skill or ability and an elemental burst, or ultimate. Sure, you could peruse each character for minor nuances and maybe their talents, but this game is pretty beginner friendly and it didn't take much effort to learn the character and equipment system, but there's still so much fun you can have in combat with the different elemental resonance and reactions. Although, I am aware that they always could add more complexity in the future because that's usually what they do in a lot of other gacha games where the characters are super simple, then they add some extra limit breaking system or some new mechanic or whatever. So I'm not gonna put it past MiHoYo, but let's just say for now that I like the way it's simplified. The second thing they do poorly is just the gacha system. Genshin Impact has one of the worst ones I've seen. Once again, I've played a lot of gacha games. This is a pretty controversial topic because on one hand there are players who believe that these rates are perfectly appropriate because you can get through the entire game with just the units you get so you don't need any of the 5 stars. On the other hand, there are the players who believe that it isn't fair to restrict a certain group of players without significant amount of disposable income from an ever-growing pool of characters and equipment regardless of whether they do or don't need them. I've whaled on some games and I've dolphined on others, and the rest I went mostly free to play. Maybe I just bought something here and there. Usually it depended on how expensive the games were. Players have been really cracking down on games with abysmal rates, and while I feel like it's fine to make summons a pay-to-win thing, even this is a little much. If we factor in the pity system, it costs well over $200 on average to get a 5-star summon, even more just to get the unit you want. So, for example, the Venti banner gives you a 50% chance to summon Venti, which means the average player would have to spend $400 to get the banner unit of choice. That's a little ridiculous even for whales. In fact, to +6 constellation a 5-star unit, it would take most people $3,000 to $5,000. Even the most hardcore spenders would think that's a terrible idea. We are way past the point of Fate Grand Order Powerball jackpot rates. Most games have an SSR pull rate of anywhere between 3 to 7%. And even for games that have a relatively low rate for the rare stars, they include some other way for you to limit break them, like, a limit break SSR, limit break just regular rare thing. But there isn't any for that. You can't purchase Constellation, what are they called? Stellar Fortunas, that's what I was talking about. You can't get Stellar Fortunas in any other way as of right now. The only way to get them is just to pull dupes. And if you want to max out like a +6 D-Luke, you have to get D-Luke 6 times, which means, yeah, $3,000 to $5,000, somewhere around there. Now there is a possibility that the rates will get higher and higher as time goes on, and that the reason why the rates are so low right now is because there are so few 5-star units and weapons to begin with. This has been a viable argument before. For instance, Final Fantasy Brave Exvius started with a 1% rate, I believe, but as more and more 5-star units came out, they raised it to 3% because it would just get increasingly harder to get the units you wanted since there are more in the pool. I mean, they also increased the maximum rarity from 6-star to 7-star, but that's another topic. They also had events where they would give away free 5-star tickets and stuff, so even free-to-play players could easily get a full team of top-tier units if they just played long enough and had a little bit of luck. So I'm hoping that Genshin Impact will be similar, but as of right now, I think that the gacha system as a whole is just extremely unfriendly even to the pay-to-win players, because those who can spend 4 digits every month or every banner, what have you, that's like 1 in every 2 to 3 million players, maybe even less. They did say something about lowering the pity count from 90 to 50, which would roughly double the 5-star rate, but that wasn't confirmed yet, so I'm not sure. Let's just hope that in the future they might release event campaigns or even special banners that let us pull a 5-star unit here or there. The total amount of Primo Gems they give for free is also kind of pathetic. You only get about 20 free pulls a month, maybe less, meaning if you were to go completely free to play, it would take you half a year to get a 5-star on average. Anyway, I don't want to harp on this that much longer, but TLDR, Gacha System needs to be overhauled or at least make 5-star units more accessible because this is 2020, fake grand order drop rates just shouldn't be the norm anymore. Okay, the video is getting a little long, so I'm going to try to speed this up a little bit, one more good and one more bad. The last good thing I want to talk about, and this might be an unpopular opinion, it's the adventure rank. I love the adventure rank system in this game. Sure, there might be some instances where it's kind of annoying, but I love how thoroughly they incorporated a player's account level into the overall progression of the game. Usually the account level would just be some vanity indicator for how long you've been playing the game for, or it would be responsible for some minute gameplay aspect, but I kind of like the pacing it gives. Almost everything you do ties in with your AR. Opening chests, activating waypoints, completing quests, the system is built so that essentially the more you play, the higher you climb. I'm only AR 26, so I'm sure once you start hitting 35 and higher, it becomes much harder to rank up and the honeymoon phase will probably end, especially since you use up all the one-time AR bonuses like map exploration and quests. So maybe my opinion on this might change, but at the moment it's really nice to see how well they designed your adventure rank to be rewarded based on simply playing as much as you can and doing as much as you can. The world level is also cool, scaling the difficulty of enemies as well as increasing the rarity of your drops. It means there's an element of satisfaction to creating certain milestones. At least for me in particular, when I reached rank 25, I just was so happy because I was able to ascend my units and weapons, get them to level 50, and I think my Kaching went from like 560 attack to like 1000, it was pretty good. I only hope they just add more ways for us to rank up once we burn through all the one-time only stuff. I don't want to have to imagine getting to like rank 50 and then take a whole month just to go up another level because the only thing I can do are chests or something. As for the last bad thing, well, I mean, there's more than 3 good and bad things, but I think the third biggest thing to draw to attention is that things are a little too hard to find. It is fun to a reasonable extent to collect stuff and use them to craft, cook, and forge items. Minecraft does it very well, but it's kind of an inconvenience at times because the only way to really track where things are is to leave a mark on your world map since they have somewhat consistent spawn locations. I am aware in 1.1 they were adding a compass or tracker to locate oculi because that's, oh my goodness, those are such a pain in the ass to find. On a side note, I feel bad for anyone who doesn't have a venti. He's the most pay-to-win character when it comes to picking up oculi, especially Geoculus. Holy sh**. Anyway, back to the discussion. If there was some way we could get like an item radar where if we need to search for items like carrots or certain ores, it would give us yellow area circles or something because the descriptions they give for where to find them are so vague it feels like half the time you're just wandering about looking for a needle in a haystack. You know, in other games it works because if this was like Pokemon, for example, where you're looking for, I don't know, Sharpedo and it says it spawns in ocean waters, there's only so many ocean water places in a single Pokemon game so you know exactly where to look at. But in Genshin, if you're looking for a specific ore and it says it's near mountainous regions, the entire leeway is almost all mountains, or if you're looking for vegetation, the entire Mondstadt is almost all forest. So you could be searching for hours and hours just to find carrots. As you can tell, I've had a really hard time finding carrots, but anyways, a little bit of user experience enhancement can do wonders for a player's enjoyment, at least just in my personal opinion. Okay, so I think that's going to be enough for this video. I wanted to talk about more, but we're getting kind of long right now, so I think we'll just leave it at that. Let me know what you guys think, if you agree with my choices or if you think there are other good and or bad things about the game that are more important to talk about. Aside from that, if you enjoyed this discussion, best way that you can show your support is like, comment, share this with your friends. Subscribe to the channel for more Genshin Impact content. If you want to fuel my gacha addiction, consider donating to the channel either through PayPal or Patreon. Links all down below as well as my socials and Discord server if you'd like to join and chat with other players. But for now, that's going to be all for today. Thank you guys so much for watching and I hope to see you again soon for the next video. Take care.